acknowledge that we are gathering and governing on the unceded traditional territory of what is now known as the Comox Nation, and we are grateful for their grace and collaboration as we do this good work on their lands. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, and all in favor? The warrant is carried unanimously, and there are minutes from regular council April 28th, May 5th, and special council meeting.
The minutes of the council meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And our first report is a development variance permit and heritage alteration permit 2739 Dunsmuir Old Post Office, I believe. Is that right? Pretty sure that's what I read. Good. You just have to hold it very close to your mic,
Okay.
like you almost have to eat the mic.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to request approval of development variance permit and heritage alteration permit to allow a dwelling unit in the basement of 2739 Dunsmuir Avenue, the building that we all also know as the old post office. Both permits were presented to the Heritage Committee in February, and revisions have since been made to the overall submission package based on the committee's feedback. So just to give us all a little bit of background, the old post office, built in 1907, is a two-story Edwardian brick and sandstone building with recognized historical value. Designated as a heritage building in 2006, it has since undergone several interior renovations and tenant improvements. Currently, the main floor serves as a commercial space. The upper floor is a three-bedroom residence, and the basement is used for storage. The property is zoned as village commercial mixed use mixed VCMU1 and comes within the heritage conservation area. The applicant has proposed converting the basement into a three-bedroom dwelling unit through renovation improvements. And to do this, the applicant has requested three variances for the location of the dwelling unit, entry to the dwelling unit, and loading area requirement, and 4 heritage alterations to remove security bars from existing basement windows, revised parking layout, landscaping, and formalize existing signage for Tuja architecture. Please note that initially 4 variances were proposed, one of which, for a second fascia sign, has been removed from this application. Additionally, during staff's review, a variance related to the loading area requirement was identified and now has been included. The 4 heritage alterations initially proposed have now changed to remove the signage component from the HAP as well, and the relocation of the fence has been combined with new landscaping revisions proposed. I will now go through each one of the requested variances one by one. So the first variance is to locate the dwelling unit in the basement of the building. As per the zoning bylaw, where non-residential and residential use is combined, all dwelling units shall be located over or to the rear of the building that contains the principal use. The dwelling unit is proposed to be located in the basement below the principal use. The main and the upper floors of the building are being utilized effectively. However, the basement has remained underutilized for many years. As per the applicant, this storage is not a necessity for the current operations, and the basement can be utilized for another use. Basement residential use is well established in the village, but the building's heritage designation and design present specific limitations. The rarity of basements on Dunsmuir Avenue and the focus on preserving street-level commercial use may explain why such units were not included in the VCMU1. Given that zoning bylaws can't address every unique case, a development variance permit is an appropriate tool for this situation. The second variance is for the entry to the dwelling unit. Zoning bylaw also requires that the dwelling unit must have a separate exterior entrance. The applicant has proposed entry through the common lobby on the main floor, which can be accessed from the back of the building. While the dedicated separate exterior entry has not been proposed, the suggested entry could be acceptable as it is separate from the commercial unit's main entry, and the basement's access is restricted by the building's existing design and internal layout. Creating a separate exterior entrance would likely necessitate significant exterior renovations and potentially result in more extensive changes to the building facade. The third variance is for the loading area. So while reviewing, staff noted an additional variance to the loading area requirement. The zoning bylaw requires at least one loading area for any commercial property. The current users do not require this loading area. Alternatively, loading can also be done from the two street parking spaces gained as a result of the parking layout revision. That was for the variances. I will now go over the requested heritage alterations one by one. So the first alteration is for the windows. To meet the PC building code requirements, the applicant has requested to remove security bars from the basement windows. The second alteration is for the parking. So in total, 4 car parking spaces are required to satisfy the needs of all users. 2 car parking spaces for existing commercial uses and 1 for the existing dwelling unit and 1 parking for the proposed basement dwelling unit. Currently, cars drive over the sidewalk on 3rd Street to access parking. The applicant has proposed a parking layout with access from the lane. The parking will be finished with a permanent surface, and based on the Heritage Committee's recommendation, the applicant has verified the functionality of the turning radius and that it meets the zoning bylaw regulation. The third alteration is for landscaping. So in response to the Heritage Committee's concerns regarding the relocation of the existing fence along 3rd Street, specifically its deteriorated condition and the potential for a solid wall-like appearance facing the public, the applicant has revised the proposal. The updated plan includes installation of a cedar hedge along 3rd Street to maintain a softer, more visually appropriate streetscape. The existing fence will only be relocated towards the lane to enclose the private yard as defined by the new parking layout. Additionally, an automatic irrigation system will be installed compliant with the HCA guidelines. Staff support the proposed revisions and consider them appropriate. The fourth variance is for the signage. So as part of the HAP, the existing signage for Suja Architecture is proposed to be formalized. While staff initially recommended including a second fascia sign in this application to provide certainty for any future business owner, this recommendation has now been reconsidered. In alignment with the Heritage Committee's feedback and to avoid constraining future sign design, staff have concluded that it is more appropriate to exclude the second sign from this overall application. Further, the maximum of 1 fascia sign per property is being reviewed as part of the zoning bylaw review project. So a variance for a second fascia sign might not even be required in the future. Lastly, there are 2 operational implications to this proposal. One, that the applicant's proposed parking reconfiguration is such that it will restore access to 2 public on-street parking spaces, making them available for community use. To accommodate this change, the village will need to remove the existing no parking signage. And second, the applicant has agreed to reserve a non-buildable 1.5 meters of area and grant a statutory right of way along the area, for the area along the lane to enable the village to maintain and construct a lane of significant width. This is made a condition of the permit. Overall, staff is satisfied that the proposed revisions are consistent with the HCA guidelines. While the Heritage Committee provided constructive recommendations, some extended beyond the scope of the guidelines. For example, the suggested removal of security bars from all windows and certain residential enhancements. Staff support the revised proposal as balanced and appropriate an appropriate response to the committee's input. To conclude, Cumberland's heritage buildings are key to its character. This proposal supports their preservation through adaptive reuse, maintaining historic integrity while adding needed housing downtown. It reflects a balanced approach that aligns with the village's goals of heritage conservation and sustainable development. Thank you, and I'm now opening the floor for any questions.
Thanks so much, Jasmine. Very nice use of adaptive, whatever you said there. It's good. Questions, council?
No questions, just comments. Thank you, Jasmine. I think this is great. We're updating.
Oh.
Thank you. I think this is great. We're updating a heritage building. Most of the variances seem very reasonable. The heritage alteration permits, I think the heritage committee did a good job fighting out some issues, and the new recommendations look nice. Permeable parking, a nice hedge. The sign looks great. Yeah, I'm totally in favor.
I'll just echo that briefly and say I know that building extremely well and to see that basement being used for additional accommodation and religion with police and things staff and by extension the outcome of the nice project.
Okay,
I just wanted to, I sat on the Heritage Alteration Committee for this, or the Heritage Committee for this. I really like the project, and I think we should be doing everything we can to provide an ease of, for owners to be able to use their older properties in the village without too much fuss. So I'm really happy to see where this is going.
me too. Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you.
There's a recommendation there, council.
I'll move that council approve the development variance permit 2024-07 DVP and the heritage alteration permit 2024-07 HAP application for the property described as Lot 12, Block 11, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan 22A, 2739 Dunsmuir.
I'll second that.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thanks, everyone. Okay, Cumberland Community Forest Park Management Plan and Financial Plan Amendment. Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, I've been working on the pre-planning phase of the Cumberland Community Forest Park Management Plan project for several months now. And it's been quite productive work, and it's mostly been working with the Comox Valley Land Trust, the Cumberland Community Forest Society, and the United Riders of Cumberland on defining the roles of those organizations in the planning process, given their collective interests and, in some cases, rights through the covenant. The major outcome of that process has been the drafting of an MOU. We've been supported by a parks planning consultant in doing this work, and this MOU process led us to believe that we're probably best to do a management planning light or management direction statement for the park, given a number of factors at play that are outlined in the letter attached to the report. We also recommend a financial plan amendment to provide budget for the project. About 25% of this allocation would be to cover engagement with the Comox First Nations, including the completion of the cultural values assessment that we just got going last week. Yeah, that's about the quick summary. If you have any questions, let me know.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions, council? No, I have questions. Don't move it yet. Any other questions?
So this MDS, Management Direction Statement, this is instead of a full parks plan, this is, you described it as light?
I describe it as in preparation for, but to serve the interests of the parks in the next 5+ years. It will still consider immediate management priorities and objectives. But what it will also do is it's a plan to fill all the information gaps that are missing, ecological inventories, other studies that, like visitor impact studies. There's a number of gaps that we have right now that would make doing a full management planning project quite lengthy in time and quite resource intensive. There's also interests of some of the those important community partners to help do some of those works, and this will help coordinate how we go about doing that. So it's a management direction statement, doesn't involve anyone other than the park owner. A management plan typically involves not only those interest groups and stakeholders, but the public, so we're proposing a bit of a hybrid.
I see. And so this will carry us through for the next 4 to 5 years while we gather more information, and at that point we can, once we know what parks we have and what the CVRD's role is, et cetera, then we can do a more fulsome plan at that point.
Exactly. We'll also know exactly what the boundaries of the park, which keep moving on us through new acquisitions, which is a good thing, but that's the other advantage to this process is, yeah, it'll give us a little bit more time for that information to come clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question?
Go ahead.
So just on the cultural, I don't understand what the cultural, value entails. Does that, look at current and future uses, or is it just about past, like archaeological kind of uses?
Yeah, it's both. There's limited information on past uses in that there hasn't been a detailed inventory of this area, and there's not a lot of information currently in Campen's database on historic use. So it's taking a little bit of that. It's also looking at current and future uses. And the Guardians are involved in this project. They've already been to a couple of the sites, and they're quite excited about what some of those opportunities might look like. And part of this project will consider that as well.
There's a lot of cedar in that forest.
Yeah, cedar and, yeah, there's a few culturally valuable sites that have already been identified.
That's great. And then my second question is about the financial piece, so moving funds from the postponed arts and culture. So can we use, when we do go to do the arts and culture planning, can we use money from this reserve to fund this, because we're using that money to, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we would just look to use some of those same funding sources, correct me if I'm wrong, in future years when we go to do those projects.
Okay.
That project's not proceeding this year, so it makes sense to
Yeah.
just move it into this project.
Yeah, I just don't want them to feel like we're not gonna, that we don't have a plan to future fund that, because we do, right?
The arts and culture, we have a plan to do the facilities work next, which is not
Okay.
in, well, it would be in the 5-year financial plan.
Okay,
The arts and culture strategy was not prioritized by council.
right.
But that's not to say that it couldn't happen in the future.
Yeah,
And we have funding for the recreation, the facility one.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, in the 5-year financial plan.
Okay, sorry, I'm reading my notes, I'm trying to figure out what I'm meaning by it. Oh, yes, so do you need the 3,000, so there's a paragraph about, additional, project budget, for, the eventual presentation of this, management
Graphic design.
thing, plan. And I think we would want to consider that, because I think there's a huge value in getting some maybe non-wordy signage or information that we can share through communications once this is out. I expect we can use that information in a variety of ways to help implement the management statement. So I'm game to add that, but I don't think it's in the recommendation, so we'd have to do an additional motion. Is that right?
Yeah, it's an alternative. What's proposed now is, I guess, call it light on that, in that we don't have a graphics person on the team right now. We could seek that out. There's also an option that council could add that later. A draft will come forward to council, and you can see
Okay.
at that point. We are looking at having mapping services as part, like that's added to the technical team.
Yeah.
But not, like, we see a lot of very graphic heavy reports these days, which can be quite helpful. It comes at a cost, so that's why it's
Yeah.
an alternative for council to consider too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but we could look at how the report comes out and then how, I just don't wanna lose that. I think there's a communications piece that obviously we'll have to follow this report and let's build it into the process
Mhm.
versus trying to figure it out afterwards.
Yeah, there might be some other options that we could look at later on how we present the report. I've seen a lot of master plans that come out with, a couple 2-pager summary that's graphics heavy. What we're proposing is not a sloppy or unprofessional report, but something that's not likely gonna have been through a significant design process in the
Yeah.
formatting that comes with that at an expense. But maybe what we do in the end is if we want to a tool, a communications tool to come up with
Yeah,
key concepts or major moves or what to expect, and that could be
yeah, or
a
like
graphic.
park zones or
Yeah,
who knows, okay. Okay, great, but we can do that later, you don't need it now.
Yeah, I think that could come later.
Okay. Okay, if there's no more questions, there's a lengthy recommendation there, council. So everyone knows the mic. Okay, good.
I'll move the council enter into a memorandum of understanding for collaborative management planning for the Cumberland Community Forest Park with Comox Valley Land Trust, Cumberland Community Forest, and United Riders of Cumberland, as attached to the report dated May 2nd, 2025. And the council directs staff to report back to council with a draft management direction statement for the Cumberland Community Forest Park to be developed based on the process, roles, responsibilities, and schedule described in the memorandum of understanding. And the council approved a $37,500 project budget funded by the reallocation of $30,000 previously budgeted for the Agriculture Strategy funded from the host community management reserve, and a new $7,500 allocation funded from the Parks Development Cost Charges Reserve. And the council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2025-2029 financial plan bylaw to reflect these allocations.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder?
Second.
Second.
And all in favor? We're gonna have to let Councillor Brandon second something. He's 3 hours ahead of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Evolve e-bike and the e-scooter share pilot. Come on up. So you brought us electric bikes, but you brought us scooters too.
No.
Go big or go home, I guess. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before we get started, I'll just do a brief introduction. So I'm joined here today with Mike Zabarski, a CBRD Manager of Transit and Facilities, and David Holzer, the Business Development Manager for Evolve Bike Share. They have prepared a presentation for you today for the most of the details and nitty-gritty information that you'll need to know to make a decision. But before that, I'll just give you a bit of background information. So in May 2024, the CBRD and BCAA, Evolve Bike Share Program, in partnership with the City of Courtenay and the Town of Comox, launched a regional e-bike share pilot program in the Comox Valley with the goal of providing residents with an affordable and environmentally friendly transportation alternative. In December of 2024, BCAA provided an update to the CBRD board of the bike share's first successful season and outlined the intention to expand the bike share program to the village of Cumberland, as well as expand the program to include the use of e-scooters. So currently e-scooters, to use the one municipal roads, they're only allowed in municipalities that participate in the province's electric kick scooter pilot project. So this pilot project includes regulatory framework around the rules and regulations required for operating e-scooters on the road. So generally what that looks like is e-scooters operate in a very similar way to how cycling currently operates on the road. Meaning that, the scooters aren't allowed on sidewalks. That's a big takeaway for that regulatory information. Should council wish to allow the use of e-scooters in the community, the village will need to join in the provincial pilot project through a council resolution. So with that in mind, I'll take this opportunity to pass this over to Mike and David, and they will give you the presentation.
Thanks, Joel.
Joel stole all of my introduction, so I won't spend much time. But just a bit more background that CBRD, we did a procurement process last year to find a provider or a contractor for the e-bike program. And so that's how we kind of landed with BCAA. And we have a 3-year agreement with them, so we're a year into that. And that's kind of our contract with BCAA. And then we, on the side of that, also have a memorandum of understanding with, right now, Courtenay and Comox. And hopefully after today or soon after, we would put the village of Cumberland into that as well. So there's some legal things in the background, and I can speak to those if there's questions, but I'll pass it on now to David to give you more of an overview of the program.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me here today.
Thanks for coming.
It's long awaited. I think when we launched back in 2024, the first question we got is, when are you coming to Cumberland? So, and we said we would come next year, and now here we are. It's next year, and we're hoping to come to Cumberland. So I'm gonna divvy this up into 2 parts, because the first part is joining into the e-bike share program, which is existing and already running. And then the second part is to give you some more information about how we would run an e-scooter program, which isn't currently running in the region. So the first part will be a little bit about bikes, and then the second part will be about how it would change if it becomes e-scooters. So there are kind of two ways in which communities run these programs, and it's called free-floating or station-based. And so we run a station-based program in the CBRD, and that's what we're proposing here today in the city or village of Cumberland. Keep my acronyms right. So we would have stations, and we've set upon 6 stations, and I'll show you those later in the presentation, or you probably already saw them. So we'll talk about that, but our system is really infrastructure light, and that's the real important part. So even though we're running a station-based system, the stations themselves can be really light of any infrastructure. Most of our stations will consist of just a simple signpost that says you can park your bike here. Where stations, we add infrastructure is where we see stations that are bigger or in more confined space, and we want to ensure people park correctly. We'll add maybe a bike rack, or we'll create a line box. So these are options that we bring to each station, kind of on a bespoke basis, given the type of station that we have. So our system has, our bikes all have swappable batteries, so there's no need for charging infrastructure. We'll charge those at a central facility. Our teams come out and swap the batteries as needed. So in the community right now, we're out about 2 to 3 days a week, and that'll increase now that the warmer weather is here and we're seeing more usage in the system. We'll start coming out more and more to ensure bike availability is extremely high. So last year in Cordy and Comox where we operated, our bike availability was like 94%, which is incredibly high. Well, which means that when a person went to a station that generally had 3 or 4 bikes at it, there was guaranteed a bike there for them to ride. And that's sort of the mode that we're looking at how we do this. So our docking approach, I went over that. And then, so this is the sustainability piece of what we'll be able to bring, is that we'll be able to report back to you the number of trips, how many miles were ridden. We do customer surveys, so we'll ask our riders, like, did you use this bike in replacement of a car? If so, you know, we can then start to calculate the reduction in trips of cars, given that kind of user survey feedback. That can translate even all the way down to CO2, though that's not like a verifiable number, but it gives you a sense of what we're trying to contribute. Last year in Cordy and Comox, I think, shoot, I'm forgetting the number, it was 15,000 kilometers were ridden on the system. So we expect to see more of that. What excites us about coming to Cumberland is that it is a nice way to connect the two communities, and hopefully it spurs on some more discussion about better active transportation infrastructure as we continue to push people. I rode up here today on one of our bikes. It was great. I really enjoyed the e-assist because it is all uphill. So this is the bike, and so there's like we bubble this thing up way too much, but there's 2 really key features that I want to show you, and that's the dual kickstand, which you can barely see. And this is what one of the most important features is, because this dual kickstand really holds the bike up. It holds it up in wind. It makes it harder to tip over. You won't see our bikes tipped over very often. In fact, in Cordy and Comox, where we operate today, we have very low events of knocked over bikes, and that's because we've invested in a much more robust kickstand, and that is also on the scooter, and you'll see it later. The other safety feature on this bike is it's pedal assist only, so there's no throttle, and it's governed at 25 kilometers an hour. So it won't go any faster than 25 kilometers an hour. I guess as you're going downhill, as I will be tonight, I will get going a little bit faster than 25 kilometers an hour, but not much, to be honest. It does try and reduce your speed. We like 25K because it's a really safe speed. If an accident occurs, we know the data suggests, and some of the early survey and early research that's being done, that those types of accidents don't typically land a person in a hospital visit. So these are the types of reasons why we decide on these speeds, and it's also a pleasurable riding. Well, maybe for some more experienced riders, they'll be like 25 kilometers is not enough, but it is a pleasurable riding speed. In the basket is a helmet for every one of our devices, and they are actually connected, and we know if the bike has a helmet or not. We know if someone took the helmet out of the holder. That doesn't necessarily mean they put it on their head, but we know that it was taken out, and we provide a helmet, as it's the law here in British Columbia, to wear a helmet when you ride a bike. The tires are all air tires, which makes it a little softer and a little bit better when going over different types of surfaces. And I know there's a bit of gravel surface here in the community, so the bikes will be able to handle that a little bit easier with these air tire bikes. So that's the bike. We spent a lot of time. It's really safe. It's really easy to ride. It's actually so simple to ride. Parking management. So I discussed this off the top, but we're using parking zones. The other thing that I wanted to, and that's what a parking zone would look like. The geofence boxes are always a little bit bigger than the actual space, and that's to account for a phenomenon called GPS drift. You'll notice it on your phone when you open up your iPhone, and your little blue dot says it's not exactly where you are, or you think you are, and it takes a little time to get back into that one spot. So we create a little bit wider, and that's why we use signage, bike racks, painted tape to give people visual aids. They're not always looking at their app when they're parking their bike anyway, so we want to give them visual aids. The other thing that we'll be doing in Cumberland is we'll be geofencing a no-ride zone around much of the mountain biking trails. These bikes are built for commuting and for city riding. They're not built for riding downhill. We are quite confident that people will not do this. We operate up at SFU, which has a number of mountain biking trails off the side, and we haven't had any instances of people using them. The bikes themselves are roughly 90 pounds, so they're quite heavy. They don't have shocks. They don't have all the wonderful things that mountain bikes do have. So we'll geofence that out, which will cut the power to the motor, and thus basically render the bike. You'll have to ride it without any power, which makes it quite difficult. And it'll also, once it's slowed down, it'll also resist a bit of riding. So
And then as soon as you get out of the restricted area,
back up to full speed. Yeah, and you'll see these zones, as you can see on the app, the red box, that's a no-ride zone. So you'll see when you're, like if you go in and you notice the power's dead and you open your app, you'll see you're in a no-ride zone. You can turn around, get out of that. Okay. So this is our first initial parking zones. Ignore the orange boxes. There was some data stuff we were doing, or the reddish pinky boxes. So before we go forward, I want to say that parking zones in a community are an iterative process. We start with one version and we'll gradually continue to move to other versions. So this is just the first version, and these are all positioned in places where we thought it would be most beneficial for the community to use the bikes at the start. Now, as we go forward, we'll look at expanding these zones. We are governed by two things, really. It's cell phone coverage and finding appropriate places to put a parking zone that aren't on people's front lawns, or like sort of in places that people would not want to have a bike parked in front of. So, as you can see at the top of the community, there's a couple dead-end streets. These are perfect spots. And then down in the middle of the community, we found 3 locations along the main drag. So this is what we'll start with, and hopefully it'll help get the community kind of moving in and out around the community on our bikes, and also back and forth to the other Courtney Comox. So that's the e-bike program, and that's what we're bringing. Operationally, we already have our operations in place. We're very confident we can manage the operations here. We can respond to any kind of bikes that are misparked, any emergency situations really within 20 minutes. We have contracts with various different, we're BCAA, we have towing companies, so we can also scramble. Generally it's just a bike, so it's not too often that we need to do this, but we have that at our resources. And we also have a local contractor here, Amp Bikes, who does our servicing, who's very committed to the program, has been doing it now for a year, has maintained some excellent KPIs. We're very confident in how that's working. And we have our local person in Nanaimo that comes up and all that week.
I'm just wondering if you want to do questions about the bike program first, and then do questions about scooters?
Your choice.
Let's do that, because I think they're in separate motions as well, just in case.
Sure.
Questions about bike share program?
thank you for this. Most of mine were answered. Thank Thank you. Most of mine were answered during the presentation. Do the bikes talk to a central station? That's how you know the batteries need charging, et cetera? Is that,
Yeah.
do you know where all your bikes are all the time? Kind of.
Yeah, I can, so all the bikes have IoT, so they're basically connected through the cell phone network, and they report back to us at a cadence of like every 15 seconds if we want it. When a bike's idle, not moving, it's more like every 2 minutes. It'll report and tell us where it is, and it'll give us a status update. Inside of the bike's IoT, it also does a check of the electrical components of the bike, so it'll check the motor to ensure that the motor is still functioning and all functioning correctly. It'll also check the battery. They'll check really important parts of the battery, like if the battery's overheating, if there's cell failures, things like this. Any of those triggers of the motor or the battery, it'll put the bike out of service immediately and alert us so that we can then attend to it. So the bikes are really intelligent. Not to mention there are backup batteries in the bike, so once the battery dies, that can still continue to communicate with us. So if a bike is vandalized, the battery is somehow disabled, we still have backup batteries inside of the bike to give us that sense of location. So we're actually always able to know where they are. Now, if there's no cell phone coverage, that gets a little more tricky. But we can know where it was last time it was in cell phone coverage and go from there.
So you can go through a non-cell service area, but you can't stay there because it'll disconnect and
Correct.
stop moving.
No, the bike itself will run just fine out of a cell phone coverage on a trip.
Okay, just
What we
the
can't
stations.
do is put a station there
Right.
where we're triggering an end or start rental,
Okay.
because then it needs to communicate with us. But the bike is actually totally fine in non-cell phone. But like I know there's, like I rode one, I was on North Cumberland Road and I ran out of cell phone coverage at one point.
You went through the zone.
Have you experienced any vandalism to the stations yet?
To the stations themselves, none. We've had very low instances of abandoned bikes. I think we've had one instance of a vandalized bike. Some fishing line got caught in a pub motor.
But not
It was
the
very,
stations?
it was very severe.
I feel like the stations are more by
No.
concern.
No, the stations are fine because they're just really a signpost. And like, we have a bike rack at a few of them. And the bike racks, we can actually tether them into the ground. For the most part, we don't. They're quite heavy. They're not a lot of people trying to move them.
Yeah, I guess that was, just slightly elaborating and maybe no further elaboration. I mean, in your experience of the year you've been running, that's great. You said one instance of vandalized theft, other intentional damage or loss. Is that basically it?
Yeah, one that off the top of my head, there have been some abandoned bikes outside of parking zones. I think we had 8 incidents where people abandoned them outside of a parking zone. We had more than that, but we had a lot of people contact us because they thought there was a parking zone where there wasn't, and so that was one of the main issues. But we had 8 true incidents of like a person leaving a bike intentionally outside of a parking zone. That's very, very low. We ran 80 bikes for a whole year. What we're seeing is the population of residents here are taking to it, the service and operating quite responsibly with it so far. We haven't had any issues.
So the tires, I heard, are these different tires than in the first ones?
Yeah, we're phasing out the hard rubber tire. So if you've used our service and you've ridden on that, you will notice it's a little bouncier. But we are now moving to air tires. So slowly but surely we will have all air tires in the fleet.
Awesome, because our roads are not all entirely smooth, so we will need some flexibility.
They're smooth enough for me.
Thank you for that. And there's no, I note on the map, we are trying to encourage non-motorized traffic out to the lake and back. But the lake was not, maybe this is a Joel question, the lake was not chosen as a station area.
Yeah, I can answer that actually. We originally thought we would go out to the lake. We were a little I think it's a phase 2 kind of approach, like a next iteration move. We're a little, there is some cell phone issues out at the lake that I think are problematic for us. And then we're also wondering how much demand there will be for people to just go stop. Like, we think people will ride out there and like hang out at the lake and then ride back. They can do that. You can do a stopover. You can ride your bike to and from. Like, we're not preventing anybody from going anywhere in your community other than the mountain bike trails. But we'll see how people react to that as well. If it's not there, if we get a call for it, that's something we can work on.
So that's my other question is the fee. So you're charged a fee on the app while the bike is in motion, or the entire time it's out of the docking station?
Exactly. The entire time it's out. So.
Okay, so that's if you go out, you can only swim for a few minutes and then you get back on the bike again.
Well, we do have hourly rates, so it does
okay.
cheap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
$13 an hour, 35 cents a minute, and $1.25 a month. Sorry, that was not on one of the slides. Sorry, my apologies.
No, that's great.
And we do have a discounted program, a monthly program for people who want to use the service quite often. It's $10 a month, and it buys down your per minute rate to 10 cents a minute. So for anybody who wants to use the service more than 5 or 6 times a month, they would be encouraged to jump on this. So last year, as a promotion over the winter, we actually gave away the monthly program free of charge. So we were basically letting people ride for 10 cents a minute if they signed up. So this is a way to incentivize people.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions on bikes? Let's talk about scooters.
Yeah, let's move on. So, we believe that we believe that the community could benefit greatly from scooters, and why as a community should you adopt e-scooters, and really it's about the acceptance and the usage levels. Right off the top, an e-scooter gets used 6 times more than an e-bike in a shared system. So it has a higher level of engagement in the community. This is going to drive better mode shift results for your community. It's going to get people moving out of cars. So we just pulled some staff reports to councils around BC, which have been operating these programs for the last couple of years, in some cases longer. So in Coquitlam, which operates an e-bike and e-scooter program, you can see 94% of the 100,000, so 94,000 trips were on the e-scooter rather than the e-bikes. So you can see this clear preference to the e-scooter to move around. And the e-scooter, one of the reasons why people use the e-scooter is that for a city like Cumberland, it's almost perfect because it's designed for a short trip, like less than 3 kilometers. It's really handy to take that really quick trip from one part of town to the other. So it has more appeal for that type of trip than the e-bike does. The e-bike, we think, will work really well in collaboration with it, because if you want to go to Courtney, it's probably better you ride the bike. The bike will be a better choice. So having those 2 kind of options will give people a full suite of options to like move around without driving their car. So in Coquitlam and in Kelowna, there's reports of like how much e-scooters actually replace car trips. Their surveys are saying 1/3 in Coquitlam. Coquitlam's the newest program, one of the newer ones, only been in operation for like a full 1.5 years now. Kelowna has been around for a longer time, and you see that their results are a little bit higher, 48%. The one interesting thing is like on our system here in the CBRD is when we asked our riders, like, did you make a purchase at a local business? Like half said, yeah, the trip resulted in a purchase at a local business. So enabling people to move around the community is also fostering a little bit of economic growth. So when we run an e-scooter program, our goals really are twofold. It's to run a safe and accepted by the community program. So safe for the people riding it, safe for the community that they're in, and we also work really hard to make sure it's accepted by the community as well, by being at community events, doing lots of promotion of the program, talking a lot about safety. And obviously our second goal is to get more people riding our stuff and drive mode shift. So our objective here is really to promote that safe use of the device and ensure that they're properly parked, and we maintain pedestrian right-of-ways so people aren't tripping over them. The station-based system that we're bringing with the bikes will also be with the e-scooters, and that takes away a lot of the kind of quote-unquote problems with how e-scooters and e-bikes park, because they're corralled into one zone. And we can move those zones around. If they're not working out, we can move them around. Our proposal is to launch with like a limited number of e-scooters at first. We don't want to put too many into the community. We want to start small. That way we can effectively manage them, and then as demand grows, we can bring more and more e-scooters in. So the idea of like not bringing and putting hundreds, or well, this community is not going to take 100, but not taking like 100 e-scooters and putting them in this community and watching them not really get utilized right away and waiting for the growth. We'll start smaller and grow up. We'll use the same parking zones, and then our hope here is to launch this summer, because we believe it's the time. So the e-scooter, one of the things that we did a lot of research on is picking an e-scooter brand. This is the one from Okai. It's similar to our bikes. In fact, the batteries swap are interchangeable, so that's a nice operational feature, one battery for both devices. But more importantly is the front tire. It's probably the most important safety feature, and especially in a community that maybe worries about different road grades and surfaces that you have. The 12-inch front tire with the shock absorbers will provide a really smooth ride, and it'll conquer a lot of cracks or unevenness, any type of issues. I know potholes are like not frowned upon to talk about, but it can get through potholes as well. We have a short platform. This is designed to end wide, and this is a choice we made. You can either go long or you can go short and wide. We made the short and wide. This discourages double riding, which is truly dangerous. Having two people, the devices really aren't meant for that. So just by design, we're discouraging that. The helmet, which isn't seen here, but there's the same similar attachment to the bike, and every scooter will have a helmet, and we'll know if the helmet's attached to the bike. We're doing some device IDs along the back and along the sides, which aren't shown here. So anybody who in the community who sees these devices, maybe sees them parked incorrectly or ridden poorly, can report it to us. And then for those with vision impairment, we're also developing a braille decal that'll go on the devices. So if someone comes across it, and we're working with the National Institute of the Blind to figure out where to place it on the device so that it would be intuitive for them, so that they could call us and contact us if this was impeding their way in some way. The device itself is limited to 25 kilometers an hour, same as the bike. Again, for the very same reasons, any incidents that happen at that speed are less likely to involve a hospitalization. And then the other thing, same with the bikes, is that all this trip data and usage is tracked. So we can come and report back to you about how they're being ridden in your community, where people are going, how they're being kind of utilized, best times, all that type of stuff. And then finally, and we'll get into this a little bit more, it's our call center. So our proposed service area, and you kind of see this is a massive expansion slide for all of the community, but our idea is to launch this regionally. Even though we believe in Cumberland, the e-scooters will mostly just stay in Cumberland. They won't really roll down to Courtenay. But the idea is to have all of the communities in the region join on to the program so that it is right across the whole program, so people can use it no matter what community they're in. The parking zones, again, will just have both devices in them. And then the slow and no ride zones. This might be something that we take an even further look in your community. We don't do it right out of the gate, other than to close down, of course, the mountain biking trails. But if we're seeing areas in the community where scooter riding is not working out well, we can put slow ride zones in or no ride zones to prevent them from going into those areas. And this is a reaction to sort of something we can do. We prefer to do it in reaction because these zones do create negative experiences, obviously, for people using the devices. And then again, a bit repetitive, but launch with the limited number of scooters. So how our daily operations work, and so it is a little different than the e-bikes. The e-bikes tend to manage themselves a little bit better than the e-scooters, so we will up our management of the system and coordinate our on-the-ground operations with the peak periods of time that we expect the devices to be used. So when we bring in e-scooters, you'll see us in your community more often. managing the system. We'll do things like go to the stations before the peak periods and ensure that the bikes and the scooters are parked properly. We'll be proactive in rebalancing as trends emerge, and trends always emerge in these programs, and that we can predict. So we'll be able to rebalance devices to ensure that we're making sure the stations are in good working order. And then obviously, same with the bikes, we can deal with any emergency situations within 20 minutes with an e-scooter as well as the parking zones. So this is another area where we might add more information. So this is really flagging a couple spaces in Courtney. But basically what we would do is we would watch these zones as we set them up, and if we're seeing some issues with them, we'd start to institute more infrastructure into the zones to help people park better. Needless to say, we're basically very much expecting that things will need to change, and we'll just watch and react. And what we try and do is be in a position where we can react very quickly. Where we think we know problems are going to occur, we're just going to preemptively do changes. So in your town center, we might put more infrastructure in the parking zones there to ensure that they park correctly. And then we did talk a little bit about slow no-ride zones already. Another great example of them. That's the slow ride zone in yellow.
And what does it slow you down to?
It's customizable. We generally recommend like 15 kilometers an hour because
Yeah.
it's a little, anything less than that, it gets a little wobbly to ride the e-scooter. It's not super safe for the rider itself. And at 15, you're only maybe double the walking speed of someone. It's pretty safe. Customer support, this is probably where we excel the most. We have a 24/7, 365-day call center here in British Columbia, managed by BCA staff. It's like the hallmark of our kind of being BCA is being able to contact us and get support right away. We respond to everything within 5 minutes. We can allocate resources really, really quickly because we have all this internal structure that's ours and we own it, to move and get people to respond to any issues within 15 minutes. That doesn't mean like we'll fix the issue, but we'll get out there and we'll get moving on it immediately. And it's a call center, so people can speak to us. It's not an email or a chat. We have those other options, but a lot of people, especially in emergency, are feeling like there's a problem that needs to be rectified right away. Enjoy actually talking to someone. With e-scooters, there always is a little bit more emphasis on managing riders. So we have strict zero tolerance policies for sidewalk riding, tandem riding. So if caught and reported and caught, we will ban those people from the system. We also put in more warnings and penalties for parking, like we do with the bike share, but we expect that this might, with the increased usage of the system, because there's more usage, there'll be more instances. And then there's also a little bit higher prevalence of fraud that we account for, just something. Moving on, safety education, as with our bikes, but more with our e-scooters, because they are a new device that not a lot of people get a chance to ride. Bringing them to a community means that they're riding a new device for the first time, so we put a lot of emphasis on safety education and fostering a culture of safe and responsible riding. So on our devices, at our parking stations, on our apps, on our social media channels, on our website, videos, we will kind of inundate the community with as much safety information as we can. The other thing we'll do is we'll be in community. We'll bring out teams to talk to community members that want to ride our bikes and members that maybe don't want to ride our bikes but just want to understand how it works. We'll give people the chance to do demos on at those events. We'll be able to show them safe riding techniques and try and get everybody off to the best first start. And we'll also be able to sort of take in that community feedback about what they're seeing and adjust as well. So BCAA is not one to just put the devices in and go away. You'll see us in the community working to try and ensure that they're ridden safely. And if we should launch, we have 3 main goals of our launch communications. That's build trust and awareness, engage the community through community events and such, and then obviously drive ridership. So that's us trying to give you guys the assurances that we are ready and willing to bring these to your community, and we think it will go really well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Questions, council? Go ahead.
Hi, this is great. Just a couple of quick questions. What's the range for one of these scooters?
Yeah, 50 to 70 kilometers, and the range on the bike is 70 to 90 kilometers.
Okay, so can't quite get to that.
Camel wheel it, isn't it?
I think after about 45 minutes of riding an e-scooter, you might.
How long, I guess this is with the bikes and the scooters, how long does it, would one of them sit idle for before you decide that it's parked sort of out of station? Like if I take it and I ride somewhere to a house party and I'm having fun and then I'm gonna ride home again later,
Right, yeah, it's not like we're proactively running out there. We will, most of the abandoned bikes are report-based, so somebody's reported that it's parked, and then we will examine the rental to see if that's like truly the case. There are hallmark signs of people who have just left it, and people that are using it in a stopover. So, and those signs are proximity to a station, things like this, like how they're used. But generally we don't wait super long. We'll just reach out and contact the member who's riding it to ensure that they are on a stopover if it's reported. So there's no like hard and fast rule, I guess, of what you're saying. Like 24 hours is generally a pretty hard and fast rule for our fleet management team to look at all these open rentals to ensure there's nothing going on.
and are the rates similar?
Yeah, I mean, this is why we don't see too much of it. We don't offer a daily rate, so it's $12.99 per hour. So after about 6 or 7 hours, that's a pretty expensive bill. We generally don't think people.
Same rates for the scooters?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Bikes, very familiar program, so we're comfortable with that. E-scooters, I really like the idea. There's also nervousness. You referenced sidewalk riding, zero tolerance for reports. I take it I saw scooter number 72, and you know that 72 was being driven by me, so you told me I can't have it again. We can verify, is that sort of how it works?
Correct. It's by verification, obviously. If it's reported, it's noted. And we couldn't verify that you were riding on a sidewalk, but people take pictures or like a video, and then we have some verification that is truly happening, then it's fine. We can't tell exactly if you're on a sidewalk. So if somebody just reports it, we will follow up with the member and say you reported riding on the sidewalk. That's not something you should be doing. They may or may not claim that they were or weren't. At that point.
Okay. Yeah, your GPS can't get that accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking into sidewalk riding detection. There is technology that exists today. It is not as reliable as we're hoping, and it requires a pretty heavy level of mapping detail for us to implement. So it's not something we're saying no to. It's something that we'll probably bring in the future. Camera technology, as you can see with
Or like a
self-driving
sensor that, because
Yeah.
they have the repetitive going
Yeah.
over the cracks, right?
Yeah, there's lots of things that you could try and
Yeah.
capture, and the real question is like, can it capture it so reliably that we could actually change, so yeah.
And how much the work experience, I guess. The other
Generally, just one last thing on sidewalk riding.
Mhm.
So the big issue with sidewalk riding is that nobody, even on a bike, wants to ride on a sidewalk. It's the least effective way to get from point A to point B is to ride on sidewalks. Most people ride on sidewalks because they feel unsafe riding on the road. It is a telltale sign that there is an infrastructure issue in your community. When you see people riding on sidewalks, it's that they're really feeling unsafe about riding on the road, that there isn't a safe place for them to go. So as much as, yes, of course, it's illegal, it's against the rules, especially on e-scooters, and we'll enforce those rules. It's also an interesting data point for city staff and you as council to consider about how to look at the infrastructure in your community.
And then just regarding scooters and them basically staying on station and not being illicitly moved, are they, how heavy are they to pick up? And there's no locking down on stations, is there? It's just there's a single locking down.
So the bikes are locked on the wheels. The wheels lock up, so they're not easily moved. They also make a noise. They'll sound an alarm when you're moving them, which is quite annoying. And very persistent. It'll stay going as long as you're moving the scooter outside of a rental. So those are the two kind of key ways, so it's hard to move. They aren't that as heavy as the bike. They're more in the 50-pound range, so they're not exactly light either, but they're not so heavy that people couldn't move them. But we do make it as difficult as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Accidents,
Yes.
do you have them?
So far, no. We've had no incidents that have resulted in any kind of police report or hospitalization to date on our system, and this is system-wide. This is in all our markets so far. The province has some data about the accidents reported in the e-scooter pilot, and it's less than 1% of out of, I forget how many trips, many thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of trips.
Yeah, let's
So
say
we've
scooter,
been,
'cause the turning radius.
yeah, one of the things I didn't mention about our scooter is that we have, that's on it as a turn signals. So this allows people to not have to take their arm off the scooter to signal which way they're going. They can simply just click a button and a light will flash on either side of the scooter.
Do you run any other pilot programs in a community this size?
No, no, this is, I think what makes this unique is that your proximity to Cordy and Comox allows us to do this. Like, the other communities that we're in, Whistler has a huge, robust, tourism community, but it is quite small in its population. And now we're in Squamish because we have Whistler and we can do this. And this is why we're interested in coming to Cumberland, is because we're creating these regional kind of networks. And we're BCAA, who's kind of committed to helping move British Columbians forward. So we have this, we're a not-for-profit that's always sort of been giving back to the community. So this gives us more relevance in your community, which is something we're really interested in.
Yeah, I'm really supportive of the bike thing, I'm less so of the scooter thing, but the fact, like the backup the BCA is providing, and just kind of comments towards that kind of make it a little bit better, but, as far as the community, I feel it's a little bit small almost for the scooter thing, but curious to see what happens. Yeah. Thank you.
Can kids use the scooters? Like, how big do you have to be to use a scooter?
18 to use
Oh, you do have to be
the shared e-scooter.
Okay. Oh, so my only other question, that's an exercise class happening downstairs, if anyone thinks we're having. It's just an exercise
Is there a
class.
landslide going on?
So if a bike or a scooter gets damaged or is involved in something that creates damage, who's insured and who is liable?
Yes, so we carry a CGL policy that will cover any damages that our devices cause in the community. We also indemnify the community. So you guys are covered, we'll stand in front if there's something. And the last thing that we do is that all of the people who ride our bikes sign a waiver against pursuing damages from other parties. So,
Okay,
as much as we can, we kind of step in front.
thank you. Go for it.
One last question, everybody here knows what I'm gonna ask. When do we get the cars? We really, really want a car share network in the valley. It's long overdue.
It's so great for BCAA, can you imagine how great it would be for you guys?
I am not the car share
Do you know the car share?
You got it. Sure.
I know the car share people, and I think I've put them in, I'm putting them in touch with, I think I'm putting them in touch with
Everybody?
Mike
Yeah, okay.
Zabarski. Car share is prohibitively far more expensive to operate in a community, so yes, it's, I'll forewarn you, it might be a bit, so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a recommendation there for Ready?
Yeah, I'll move that. I move that council receive the Evolve e-bike e-scooter share presentation from Michael Tabasco, CBRD, and David Holzer, Evolve e-bike share. And that council authorize the chief administrative officer to enter the village of Cumberland into a memorandum of understanding with the Comox Valley Regional District, City of Courtenay, and Town of Comox to allow the operation of the BCAA Evolve e-bike and e-scooter program within the village of Cumberland. And that council consents to the electric kick scooter pilot project taking place within the village of Cumberland as provided for under BC Regulations 247/2022.
Seconder?
Second.
Councilor Berkey, that was your chance.
Gave you some time.
Next one.
Oh, he's muted.
You're muted, so get ready, because the
Yeah,
next
I know,
one is
I
all
just-
you.
Sorry, everything sounds like it's underwater over here. I'm trying
Oh,
my
I'm
best.
sorry. Okay.
You look good, Bo.
Okay, all in favor? And that is, did you get a seconder, Rachel? Okay. Okay, thank you so much for
Thanks,
coming.
everybody. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And next up is council member monthly reports. You'll see that I lightened my load this month. I may go back to my.
Rachel, is there a way I can see the screen up on because I'm not getting any of the slideshows either.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought I had shared it with you. It didn't work. I'm gonna take you off the Bluetooth. Maybe that'll help the sound.
That's too bad, Council. The last slideshow was.
Yeah, it just sounds really garbled doing my best, but.
I apologize for missing the report, so.
That's okay. Okay, so if there's no questions on the council reports, then we are on to bylaws, which is, that's you, Seamus, yep. Official community plan amendment, rezoning development variance permit 3284 Second Street.
Welcome, thank you. All right, so the purpose of this report is just to bring the bylaws for third reading and adoption. Again, these bylaws are for 3284 Second Street, official community plan amendment bylaw number 1228/2025, zoning amendment bylaw number 1229/2025, and of course, development variance permit 2501, all at 3284 Second Street. So, of course, just for background, council did grant first and second reading on March 24th for the OCP and zoning bylaw. Of course, earlier this evening, we held a public hearing, and ultimately, we're just looking for council's third reading and adoption of bylaws. Of course, the variance, I just will give a brief background while we're here. It is to waive the requirement of a loading space on the property. We do hold the property to the motel requirements in the zoning bylaw, and based on the information provided, one loading space was required, but there's no space for it to be provided on site. So the applicant is requesting that be waived, and staff are in support of this variance. One thing I'd like to just call attention to in the development variance permit is that we did add a condition onto the development variance permit in response to conversations held on March 24th. Basically, there are some questions about how the public can get in touch with the owners of the future operation. And the condition of the variance is that they post a sign with a name and a phone number of a local contact person, much like we would do with a vacation rental. And since there's no good tools in the bylaws to post that, we felt the variance would be an appropriate tool just to make sure that's installed. And other than that, I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Seamus. Questions, council? Comments?
Yeah. I'd just like to make a comment about the public hearing. There's a couple people who were not in time. The proponents seem to be upset that they had never received any complaints. So I just suggest to people, the neighbors, to talk to the actual proponents if they have issues with the noise, because they have told council that they have not received any noise complaints. So there's a disconnect there. So if the public would contact them directly if they have issues, then people can work things out a little easier. That's it. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to sort of comment and sort of refer to an issue that I think we're all unified around this table and pretty much amongst the community that we want to see more general rental accommodation, because we know there's a shortage just in the community. I did see this arise in some of the comments. I want to say that from my perspective, the reason that the applicants are here, that the proponents are here, is because the provincial law has gone in place to basically tighten up on vacation rental and effectively free up a lot of units for long-term rental. So that should be happening across our community. And then people want to operate a guest accommodation properly, come to a commercial rezoning group, or a rezoning group. And I think that's the way it should be working, to provide both of those things that we so desperately need in our community: good tourist accommodation and good long-term rental.
Yeah, I totally forgot what I was gonna say. I appreciate that this business was opened at a really inopportune time, and that they've struggled to continue to operate because of things completely beyond their control. I also appreciate the concerns from the neighborhood about having non-residential use in your neighborhood. I have a similar situation in my neighborhood, and it does detract from the neighborhood not having someone living on site. So I just want to acknowledge that we see that is a concern, and we identify with that concern, but we also know that this village needs short-term accommodation. We are a destination, an international destination, and we don't have a hotel. So if we want the economic benefits from the tourism we experience, and that we are paying for as a village, as a corporation, to mitigate and to deal with and to plan for, then we want to keep those people inside the village as long as possible, so that they continue to spend their money in our businesses. So that is important to me. I just want to clarify something that I believe is in the report, that that the mixed-use zone is extending off Dunsmuir towards that site on 2nd, in the new, that is a consideration in the new OCP zone, yes?
That's correct. So one of the things that we are contemplating under the new official community plan is extending mixed-use designation along that portion of Penrith, I believe. Second, that's right.
Yep. Okay, so, yeah, so this is in line with that future
Exactly.
designation.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a recommendation, right? No one else has any comments or questions?
I'll move that council give third reading to and adopt bylaw 1228, cited as official community plan amendment bylaw number 1228, 2025 for 3284 2nd Street, legally described as Lot 1, Block 5, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan 522. And that council give third reading to and adopt bylaw 1229, cited as zoning amendment bylaw number 1229, 2025, 3284 2nd Street, legally described as Lot 1, Block 5, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan 522. And the council approved development variance permit DVP 2501 to reduce the required number of off-street loading spaces for 3284 2nd Street, legally described as Lot 1, Block 5, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan 523.
Seconded, Councilor Barecki is seconding, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Yes, okay. And all in favor? And no one is opposed, that carries unanimously, thank you very much. And lastly is the 2025 property tax rates bylaw.
I will
Yeah,
recommend
go
that
for it.
council adopt the 2025 property tax rate bylaw number 1233, 2025.
Second. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Sorry, thank you, Seamus. I didn't say thank you before we went to vote. New business, notices, motions, and announcements. There is a Heritage Committee meeting scheduled for May 15th at 4 p.m. here in the Cultural Center. Please do check the website before you come to these meetings so that you can be informed of any cancellations. And question period, do we have any questions? The audience is all left.
No.
No questions by email, so there is a closed portion, if someone can move that recommendation.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations.
Seconded? Thank you, and all in favor? That's carried as well. We are adjourned for a moment.